Inspiration can strike you at the strangest of times. After not doing much in the way of homemade cosplays for a few years, I was sitting on the toilet one day, 2 months prior to Denver Fan Expo, when the cosplay gods showed me a vision. Pants. Glorious red pants. I thought about how all the recent Deadpool costumes have a zipper fly, and how that implies his pants are a separate component from his shirt, and how it wouldn't take an enormous effort to make some Deadpool pants. And then I realized I could make a Deadpool everything else, too! And so we were off to the races to realize the Red Wrongdoer's wardrobe. Although, keep in mind, this video was filmed a year ago in the strange world of 2023, where we all still gave a shit about Blue Beetle. Or at least I did. Damn it! A lot has happened in the time since. I moved out of my parents' house and got my own place. I even did a whole other cosplay since then of an obscure Image Comics character, and I didn't film the process for that one at all because no one watches these unless they're Spider-Man related. Deadpool kinda looks like Spider-Man. I'll do my best to recollect whatever I was thinking and doing at the time when we made this suit so many months ago. So, let's start with pants! Now I know this is sacrilege, but toss the spandex. I know he says he squeezed his ass into spandex, but it's not. Shut up. That's how my first Deadpool cosplay was when I was 8 years old, and the second one I did when I was 15. But the more I look at it in the comics, the less I think anything other than the mask really needs to be all that stretchy. Our Deadpool pants shall be a good old pair of red jeans I found on Amazon. Something practical that keeps your legs warm and has pockets and belt loops. Maybe after so many years of wearing tights for Spider-Man suits, I just want to be able to reach at my butt cheek and find my wallet at one of these conventions for once, instead of a big handful of blued synthetic fabric and some white meat. But for those of you that want something to chafe the nips, a red spandex workout shirt is the way to go. I hate that Under Armour logo. Why'd you spell it like that? Fraud? Get out of here. It mocks me with its smug aura. It's like an X, but it has the feeling of two U's interlocked. Heresy! Deadpool's design has some basic traits that always carry over. Black on the sides, red in the middle, black circles around the eyes. But for the longest time, there was no consistency at all. Artists in the comic biz have a certain amount of leeway with details on characters like Spider-Man, where the number of spacing and the web pattern are subject to change, or the eyes can have a variety of subtly different shapes. Maybe the logos are stylized one way or another, or it just comes down to this guy likes the boots being a little bit shorter than this guy. But with Deadpool for a few decades, it was just pure anarchy. Every single artist had a different take on Deadpool. The harness holding his swords was never the same. The belt could look any number of ways. The legs and boots could really just be anything. The gloves always shift, so we must equipped. Even the length of the swords was like, not a set thing. Sometimes they're just stubby little daggers instead of full-fledged katana. There was that time during the Christopher Priest run when he had all these extra red detail lines for no reason, and his tailor actually tells him he'll get more consistency if he was less obscure. From far away, it's always kind of looked pretty much the same, but I can't help but agonize over the details. Some Deadpool suits have black cuffs around the ankles and gloves. Some have red ones. Sometimes he has pure red gloves, or sometimes he's got black fingerless gloves on top. Sometimes he's got his own logo on the back of the palm. Sometimes it's just this Mickey Mouse looking shit. You could always make the excuse that these were just different suits he was changing into between stories, but sometimes multiple artists would imagine the costume differently in multiple pages of the same story. Complete chaos. I found that there's an almost kind of neutral evergreen Deadpool design in the early days that Ed McGuinness was mostly sticking to in the Joe Kelly run of the comics, but he slipped in these little idiosyncrasies like the mask getting kind of a pointy hood shape on the back, and that eventually became the default. And even then, the belt buckle and the shoes on this basic evergreen Deadpool design were always subject to change. Unless you're trying to capture the look of one specific artist from one specific time, the best you could hope for in this era was just kind of mixing and matching elements from different sources. So I guess that's what I'll do now in the spirit of classic Deadpool and his completely randomized outfits. It wasn't until 2013 at the beginning of the Duggan and Posehn run on Deadpool that someone made a damn model sheet we could all just agree on and stick to. And to Marvel's credit, this is a dynamite design, and everyone's been very on board with keeping it consistent ever since then. And that's where the pants come in. I sketched out a plan for what parts need to be black fabric and went to work. My goal is to blend the functionality and pants of modern Deadpool with the simplicity and iconography of the classic evergreen Deadpool. So instead of a little red crotch piece on black leggings, We have full red pants and a black panel going down the thighs on each side. I found this cool pleather material that has a dotted texture on it that looks kinda nice. I've always felt that the key to making superhero costumes look real without feeling cheap is just textures. You don't need hundreds of panel lines or ridiculous layering. If you want it to look higher quality than simple tights, it's just gotta have a texture or pattern that looks really good on camera and gives it more of a tactile feel. Maybe if you feel really silly, you'll put a billion Superman logos on the texture of a Superman costume. Results may vary. Deadpool's essentially got a backless black vest on, so we treated it like that and cut it like two halves of a shirt. It's important to hem parts like this so it's neat and you've got clean edges on the panels. Though, admittedly, sewing faux leather can be a pain in the hide. Now, every Deadpool design is at least consistent with this. There's a little black rectangle on the chest on each side. Somehow, some way, this is always kind of apparent. Even the movies know this one. So I opted to make that a separate piece and slip it under the main vest part to give it some dimensionality. Since I need the tops of my sleeves to be black too, I cut some divots out of the armholes on the vest so I could hem them too. The sleeve was kind of a weird gamble to get right, and I'm honestly shocked we got it as symmetrical as we did, but it was like cutting a short t-shirt sleeve and then fitting that under the vest. Problems arose when we came to the conclusion that there was no practical way to sew this with that machine, so I had to stand there like a mannequin while my wife and my mom both stitched the costume to my body. This was actually filmed the week before we made the Invincible cosplay, so I'm still quite chubby here. Let's all be adults about it, don't act like a jackass. I realized in the years since that my anxiety medication causes weight gain as a side effect, so just know that while my Peter B. Parker bod is irritating to battle with, at the very least I'm of sound mind and feeling relaxed about the impending doom. If I get skinny again, just know that it's because I'm losing my marbles and hearing the voices again. That's the trade-off, kids. Growing up sucks. Mental health issues make this cosplay more authentic, actually. To make sure the red sleeves didn't roll up at all, I cut a little thumb hole on them, Garfield Spidey style, to keep them pulled forward under my gloves at all times. I got some red spandex gloves and then covered the overlap between those and the sleeves with this old pair of Deadpool fingerless gloves I've had forever. I think I got them at like Hot Topic or something in like 2014. But this was a handy trick for obfuscating the fact that the shade of red on the sleeves and the gloves wasn't exactly the same. In fact, every single piece of this suit is a different shade of red from every other piece. But you kind of don't notice once it's all together because the black fabric is between all of them. Now, the shoes ended up causing some problems. I've noticed that classic Deadpool shoes actually have this kind of shape to them that always reminded me of red Converse with black rubber on them. So I figured I could just try to do that to achieve the same look while not having to learn how to make shoes from scratch. The movie and the newer comic design both achieve this same color blocking by putting armor plating on an all-black boot. But I like the old way a little better. On the Converse website, they let you customize shoes, and I tried to create something that looked as close as possible. But Converse seems to think a size 10 apparently means the shoe needs to be 15 inches long, and I wasted $90 on a pair of clown shoes. Converse run really long and narrow, so I guess the universally agreed upon male shoes sizing chart just doesn't apply to them, and they have their own completely different set of rules that we aren't all privy to, for f***'s sake. We were nearing the date of Fan Expo, and I wanted a Deadpool suit to wear when I met Nolan North, so the clock was ticking. I gave the long shoes to my cousin's husband, who was way taller than me, and then resorted to desperate measures, trying to paint a pair of knockoff Converse I got at the grocery store red. This was a fool's errand. Black fabric doesn't want to turn red no matter how many layers of fabric paint you slop on there with a sponge brush. It's just going to turn black that's been mildly tinted red and turned very crusty and unpleasant to touch, like one big dried up stain. Spray painting it won't help either. You're kidding yourself, idiot! Stop trying that! It's never gonna work! The only solution is to stir the chicharrones evenly in the grease until they start to get crispy, but don't let them sit too long or they'll burn and become rubbery.
Oh, because that one video.
Yeah.
I remember that.
You know, my wife actually first saw me through that Black Suit Spider-Man video. We didn't talk until years later, but that was her introduction to me as a person. Was the crotch spider. Isn't that just ridiculous? Anyway, I found some shoes that were knockoff Converse in the right color that could ship fast and got those instead. What a disaster. Longtime collaborator of the channel and on-again, off-again serial procrastinator Jacob volunteered to build me a mask for this cosplay since he had made me one before. It looked great, but my head is much bigger than Jacob's, so it didn't fit so good and constrained my ability to breathe and blink. Like, the mask was so tight that my eyelids couldn't slide downward. I liked the look of the eyes, so I opted to reuse them and let Jacob sew the mask itself. But for some reason, he just kept putting me off and not showing progress pictures and was really cagey about updates and what he was doing that week. This was because my entire family had conspired against me. So instead of hoping and praying the mask would ship in time for the convention, we were just going to make it together in person wearing our jammies, which was more fun for the video. He reused the old eyes from that first mask on a new one made from scratch using a pattern for how the movie Deadpool mask is sewn. Then Jacob carefully attached the eyes with Gorilla Glue, my favorite hair care product. The eyes are like from one of those like plastic face masks that's a face, you know? You just cut those out. Now, it worked well enough for me to have a functional mask, but it was pretty baggy near the bottom of the mouth. It made it look like I had a massive neck. Also, the seams kind of were weird on the top, and it gave me this kind of cat ear looking thing. Beggars can't be choosers, though. We had the convention to get to. Here in Xavier's cosplay sweatshop, our motto is good enough is good enough. But Jacob accidentally stepped on my mask at Denver Fan Expo and broke it, so we gotta make a new one. Okay, so I tried a method to make a more traditionally sewn spandex mask, simulate the seams with puff paint, taking cues from how we make Spidey masks. Getting the eyes symmetrical is tricky, but I realized you can turn one inside out and overlay it on the other side to get it a lot closer than eyeballing it. I laid the puff paint on thick for the line and then added two lines side by side, kind of like how Jacob highlighted the seams on an Insomniac Spider-Man cosplay a few years back. A Deadpool mask should be simple. It should be. But so should a black suit Spider-Man cosplay. This is one of those cursed projects where every conceivable thing went wrong at every step. Let's recap how making the mask went, and keep in mind, this is happening over the course of multiple years. Attempt 1. Jacob made the mask too tight for my head. Attempt 2. The mask is too loose. Jacob also accidentally stepped on it and broke it at Fan Expo while I was in the bathroom or something. Attempt 3. The Gorilla Glue fumes created a fog over the lenses, making them impossible to see through. Attempt 4. When I painted the eyes black and set them outside to dry for the afternoon, the sun was too hot and melted the plastic, warping it into an unusable shape. Attempt 5. The same thing happened with the heat of the sun in only 20 minutes. The planet is too hot. We should have completely restructured society 30 years ago. We're all going to die of heat stroke in our beds at night over the next 300 years as the temperature between day and night becomes completely indiscernible.
Somebody kill me, please!
Attempt 6. I attached the eyes too close together because my mannequin head is too small. Attempt 7. Good God, I can't end the video without a usable mask, so I need to get at least one successful attempt. I put one of the other masks on the mannequin head so it would have the curves of the cheekbones and the brow while also stretching it a little bit more to the size of like a normal face. They should invent foam mannequin heads that are 15% larger so I don't have to deal with this shit. I put some squishy foam pads inside to raise it off my face enough that I can blink my eyes inside the mask. There, it's done. That's a mask. Except the glue kind of ruined the paint on the plastic and made it all gray and messy, so I tried to mask it off with tape and then paint it again, but the wind picked up at that exact moment and splattered black all over the gaps in the masking tape. Attempt 8. Ah, f*** it, who cares? So I found a great set of swords on Amazon that are convincing on camera but not deadly enough to get you kicked out of a public place for vivisecting a convention vendor. I also found a pretty good pre-made belt that had pouches on it, because you need pouches. You gotta have pouches. You just gotta. Deadpool's an accessory-heavy character, and you don't need to build it all by hand. That's unreasonable. It's okay to just buy some shit. I used to feel like it was lazy to just buy parts instead of handcrafting them, but then I grew up and got a goddamn job. There's no right or wrong way to cosplay. Actually, the wrong way to cosplay is by doing blackface. Don't do that. But otherwise, just use your imagination and have fun. Speaking of blackface, I always felt like Rob McElhenney would have made a way better Weasel in the Deadpool movies than that obnoxious shithead that kind of looks like me. I wish they had the abusive relationship from the comics so Wade could just slap him anytime he said something irritating. But then I guess that would be after every single line because he's TJ Miller. I know that's not really relevant to the cosplay, but I figured I'd get that out of the way since I'm in a Deadpool mindset. I made these little black bands to wrap around the neck and the ankles. If you use Velcro, don't just rely on the sticky thing on the back. actually take time to sew the Velcro to the fabric because it kept falling off and I almost lost this anklet at the convention like 8 times. There you have it, Deadpool, the reddest Reddit superhero in all his flanderized glory. I have photographic evidence that I did like it before it was cool. And even though it's now no longer cool at all, I still like it a lot. He's a character that's always been very special to me, and I'll continue to sing the praises of his strongest stories even when his weakest ones are unfortunately the ones that are the most well known. Way back in the day when I reviewed the game, I felt strongly that it wasn't a good representation of the most appealing aspects of the character, and it was putting its worst foot forward in terms of introducing him to the mainstream because of that. Some parts of that video were worded poorly and skimmed the border of sounding a little like gatekeepy fanboyism, but what I was ultimately trying to convey is that if you want to get to know the character best, I encourage you to seek out the stories at his source instead of taking the pop culture zeitgeist Facebook meme version at face value. Because even after everything, I still have so much love for those stories, and I hope one day to see those become as well known and beloved as the history of more popular comic characters. Yeah, I don't know, man. I hope it's cool, but the trailers for Deadpool 3 look a little rough around the edges. I mean, at the very least, Deadpool's costume looks fresh as hell, and he's not wearing whatever the hell that is. I mean, at least it's the right colors. Nolan North is super nice, by the way.
Get a load of this clown.
I always get mad at YouTube for not putting my videos in the subscription box because people will comment, "Finally, Xavier uploads again after all these years," not knowing 3 other videos came out within the last month already. So maybe that stupid bell icon thing will help you remember I exist. If you want other ways to support the channel, you can always go hit up that Patreon for early videos and exclusive stuff because it's just $1. I'm not kidding, it's only $1. Isn't that cool? If just 5% of the people subscribed to me donated only $1 a month, I could make videos even faster and keep my house. You can also check out our merch on TeePublic, or just buy some of my random stuff on eBay. I have a pretty substantial collection of old toys that are still in the box in perfect condition, so go take a look in case you find something you like. And lastly, since this is a YouTube video and you probably play Fortnite, drop my creator code XavierGM next time you buy a silly dance or a cool character skin. Really helps me out. See you next time!